Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Paulette Senior. I'm speaking on behalf of I'm the President CEO of the Canadian Women's Foundation. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather this morning is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Today, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet and work on this territory and to extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, Métis people. However, we recognize that land acknowledgements are not enough. And what we need to do actually is to pursue truth, reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship in an ongoing effort to make right with all our relations. I'm proud to be here today on behalf of the Coalition of Women's Rights and Equality-Seeking Organizations throughout Canada, as well as people across the country who understand that advancing gender equality will also strengthen our democracy. Together, we are calling for a federal political leaders debate on gender equality before the 2019 election. This debate is decades overdue. It's been 35 years since a leaders debate focused on gender equality. The last one happened in 1984. Not talking about gender equality has not served us. There is still much more to do, and we know that we can't take our progress for granted. History has definitely taught us that. While we're seeing extraordinary movement awareness and calls for change, interest is no substitute for action. We need political leaders to be transparent about their platforms on issues. We need them to explain how they will live up to their promises and make a difference in the lives of diverse women. We are asking for political accountability. A functioning democracy requires no less. Gender equality is not a fringe issue. In the 2015 election, women made up over 52% of voters and participated in a higher rate than men in most age groups. In the current political climate, we don't see them disengaging anytime soon. This call for democratic debate is an opportunity for Canada's would-be leaders to take a leading role in transformative change for all Canadians. So federal party leaders, we're asking you again, in 2019, are you up for debate? Now I'm going to turn it over to Sandeep Prasad, who's the ED of Action Aid Canada for Sexual Health and Rights, to highlight some other key points.
Thank you very much, and good morning. As the Executive Director of Action Canada for Sexual Health and Rights, I'm pleased and proud to stand in support of the Up for Debate campaign. From within the movement to promote and defend reproductive and sexual rights, we know without question that human rights are not only intersectional, but utterly reliant on one another. For example, sexual and reproductive rights are eroded when we fail to safeguard the right to an adequate standard of living, and vice versa. Because these issues exist together, we must unite together to address them. This election is the time to do that. Staggeringly high levels of poverty and violence continue to victimize women, and particularly women with disabilities, migrant women, Indigenous women, sex workers, racialized women, and trans women. Up for Debate will work to remind federal candidates that these levels of violence are not only a result of sexist or regressive policies, but the result of neglect and lack of fundamental steps towards ending poverty for all. As our calls to action detail, all federal parties must commit to specific steps that address these key human rights issues. While sexual and reproductive rights, including the rights to sexuality education and access to abortion, must increasingly be protected from those who would have us regress on our hard-won laws and policies, we cannot lose sight that there is much work to be done to realize these rights. We ask that the leaders here today and every person standing for election in October clearly state what they will do as part of their commitment to gender equality and human rights to enable all people to exercise their sexual and reproductive rights. Complacency is a political decision too, and the Up for Debate campaign is built to demonstrate to all candidates that millions of individuals across this country will not remain complacent. Thank you, and it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague Lauren Rivon from Oxfam Canada.
Thank you. Hello. Around the world, the rights of women and gender diverse people are increasingly at risk with the rise of populism and shrinking space for civil society to peacefully advocate for human rights. This is compounded by the chronic underfunding for women's organizations and social movements to carry out the critical and life-saving work to safeguard justice and equality. Funding for the Canadian women's movement was slashed for many years, and organizations across this country had to close their doors. While there has been very welcome increase in funding and support to these organizations under the current government, more resources and investments are still needed. Women's rights organizations need the resources to offer frontline services to women and gender diverse people, but also to mobilize and get at the root causes of discrimination and inequality. It is particularly important to fund organizations who support and are led by people who experience discrimination on multiple grounds, including gender diverse people, racialized, disabled, immigrant, refugee, and Indigenous women. This is why Up for Debate is calling on all parties to commit to increased long-term core funding to women's rights and equality-seeking organizations to enable them to carry out their vital work here at home and around the world. Before we conclude, I wanted to remind everyone that Up for Debate is a non-partisan campaign. We had invited all federal parties to join us at this press conference today to share their commitments to advancing women's rights and gender equality in the lead up to the next election. We are pleased that the NDP, the Bloc Québécois, and the Green Party answered our call and are here with us today. I'll be handing over the mic to Jagmeet Singh to say a few words and then hand it over to the next. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's an incredible honor to be here. I want to say that I'm here as an ally. This is a coalition that, as you can see, is largely led by women, and I want to be here as an ally to these incredibly strong women who are fighting for important issues. I also want to commit, as federal leader, that I am committed to be up for debate, and I will be there at any debate organized by this coalition. I also want to say that a couple of things are really concerning. The idea of having the fact that there's been such a gap in having a gender equity debate, a debate on women's rights and issues and gender diverse issues is troubling. And it's absolutely the right time to have that debate, particularly given what's going on in the U.S. with debates and decisions that are eroding a woman's right to choose and the ability to have power and control over reproductive rights. This is fundamentally something that as New Democrats we want to uphold and defend. I'm proud to be pro-choice myself, but not just pro-choice myself. I'm proud to lead a caucus that is entirely pro-choice and that every candidate that is a part of our movement will be pro-choice. There is no debate in being pro-choice for New Democrats. I'm also want to include that it's not enough to be pro-choice if we don't have access, if people don't have access to reproductive services. And that includes access to prescribed contraceptives and medication, but also reproductive health services. And that means making sure those are funded and supported so people can access them wherever they are. Gender diverse and women can make sure they can access these services no matter where they live in this country, rural, regional communities. Everyone has to have access for this right to be meaningful. In closing, I also want to just reiterate my commitment to childcare. Childcare is probably the number one way to address gender equity and pay, ensuring that women can enter the workforce, addressing poverty and a host of other issues. We're also committed to pay equity as a principle, and it needs to be backed up with funding to achieve its reality. Women still get paid, and in many cases, 32% less than men. Violence against women is another symptom of inequality and injustice. We've got to support all initiatives to fight and end violence against women. And that includes making sure there's access to shelters and there's support and funding, which is core funding, as was indicated earlier, long-term, sustainable, and predictable funding so that organizations can actually plan out a strategic vision that is actually able to be executed with the funding that is reliable and dependable. I'm committed to these issues, and I'm proud to be here to stand with this coalition today. It's my honor to be an ally. Thank you.
Oh, do you want to go next, Monique? I'm sorry. Monique, tu as la parole.
Bonjour, merci.
Oui.
Alors, merci de l'invitation, puis ça nous fait plaisir d'appuyer cette demande. Écoutez, j'ai 2 filles et elles pensent que les générations passées ont tout réglé, ne serait-ce que par l'accès au vote, ne serait-ce que par l'accès à l'environnement. Et je n'arrête pas de leur dire non. Quand c'est question des femmes, on peut toujours reculer et on le voit que ça arrive à travers les mouvements populistes. Alors, Il faut toujours être là, il faut toujours être vigilante. Et les femmes en politique apportent des idées différentes parce que nous vivons des choses différentes. Et je vais vous donner 2 exemples. Les femmes, pendant longtemps, n'avaient pas le même salaire que les hommes pour un même travail. Alors, elles sont arrivées avec des pressions par les groupes de femmes, des pressions par les syndicats, des pressions auprès des députés pour avoir des lois sur l'équité salariale. Un autre exemple, les femmes voulaient aller sur le marché du travail, mais elles avaient des contraintes auxquelles elles faisaient face et qui ne pouvaient pas les aider à aller sur le marché du travail. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'elles ont fait? Ben, elles sont intervenues pour avoir des congés parentaux, pour avoir des centres de la petite enfance et leur permettre d'être actives sur le marché du travail. Donc, encore une fois, mouvement de femmes, mouvement syndical, mouvement auprès des politiques, des politiciens pour avoir ces droits-là. Alors, c'est pour ça que c'est important, la voix des femmes, pour amener ce qui nous empêche d'être 100% dans la vie publique et donc d'avoir des politiques qui vont nous amener à prendre toute notre place. Merci beaucoup.
Et merci tout le monde. Merci à mes collègues parlementaires, Monique Posé du Bloc québécois, Jagmeet Singh, MPD, et tous les membres de cette coalition vraiment importante. Dans les dernières élections fédérales, nous avons aussi un effort d'avoir un débat sur les droits des femmes. Last election, we had up for debate. I was ready, and we'd all committed, and then somehow the NDP and the Conservatives said they wouldn't show up, and it got canceled. So I'm really thrilled to know that we have 2 party leaders here who are saying clearly, we're up for debate. We're not going anywhere. We need to protect our debate space in national election campaigns. We have a new debate commission that's been created for the general issues leaders debates. I want to share with you that I was troubled when the Conservatives said in the House this week that the Leaders Commission, the Leaders Debates Commission, established with the commissioner being David Johnson, was, quote unquote, a liberal plot to steal the election and biased. Now, that's a bad sign because I've been in this business of running for Parliament and being in leaders' debates and being excluded from leaders' debates. And the consistent thread of my experience is Conservative leaders trying to shut down debate to keep the only woman leader of any federal political party off the stage with him. I don't want to see that again. So I'm calling out what I heard the Conservatives say this week. So I also want to say very clearly, nous sommes comme Verts absolument engagés pour tous les droits des femmes. C'est pas acceptable de voir les choses, de vivre les choses comme dans les États-Unis. Maintenant, we absolutely must protect women's rights to reproductive health, to legal abortions, to pay equity, to child care. These should not be even debatable issues in 2019. So as the only leader of a federal political party who is a woman, leading now, I'm happy to say, finally, a gender-balanced caucus, because we've been 100% women too long. So I now lead a gender-balanced caucus of 2. I hope to see it increase. I want to thank all the groups involved, those that didn't take the stage this morning, Amnesty International, Canadian Women in the Law, all the groups that have worked on Up for Debate. Let's make it happen in 2019 that all the party leaders are accountable and state clearly to the women and men of Canada where we stand on gender issues, intersectional issues, and the rights of women, trans women, intersection women, marginalized women, against violence against women, and say it loudly and clearly.
Thank you. Were you speaking?
I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
However, and I know you always can, but I'm just wondering if there are any questions. If there are any journalists in the room that have questions.
I see no journalists.
Okay. All right. So that brings us.
We had another member of Parliament here, Mélanie Gill from the Bloc.
Oh, well, thank you for being here, and thank you, Irene, and all those who spoke. And you will hear from us soon in terms of our next steps. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Paulette.
Thank you.